Hey, it's Rachel. Just a heads up, there's a story about domestic violence in this episode.
Writing is useful that way because we all have things we say we regret or people who go we can't talk to. And in the poem, I do what I wasn't able to do in the physical.
It's a second chance.
My mother, if she saw us with books, she'd say, get up and do something. I like funk. My most played artist on my is James Brown.
I was not expecting that.
I'm Rachel Martin, and this is Wildcard, the game where cards control the conversation. Each week, my guest chooses questions at random from a deck of cards.
My guest this week is poet Joy Harjo. Joy Harjo is one of the most revered poets in the United States. Joy grew up in Oklahoma as part of the Muskogee Creek Nation, and she's used her writing to capture the diverse experiences of Native people in this country. And in 2019, she was named the first Native American U.S. Poet Laureate. And this spring, she's releasing a new version of her book, For a Girl Becoming. It is my pleasure to welcome Joy Harjo to Wildcard. Hi.
Hi. I'm glad I could be here.
I'm so glad you can be here, too. Thank you so much for being game to do this. First three cards. One,
Middle.
two, or three. Oh, you were already feeling something for the middle. You're already feeling it. Where would you go when you needed to escape as a teenager?
As a kid, I would escape into the closet as a little kid. And my drawings, they're probably still in that closet. We no longer have that house. Or outside. I would go out at times when everyone was asleep or the world was quiet. And I still like that. That's where I find things. That's where I find images and sounds and fresh ideas and hear. I mean, it's and listen. That's how I discover. I guess you could say a kind of peacefulness, but also a kind of depth that isn't always present when you're in the realm of chatter.
Is there something in particular that you felt that you needed to get away from when you were an adolescent? Or was it just adolescence?
Yeah, I needed to get away from adolescence. I know I always feel for those kids when I've gone in and talked to them and vibe with them because, I still understand those times, that period, which is a time of, I think of adolescence as being like a chrysalis moment, like you've got the caterpillar and the chrysalis is where they essentially liquefy and then reform. So it's a time of chaotic form of, I was this, but I'm going to be something else. And I would imagine in that chrysalis period, the known parameters have fallen away. And then the butterfly emerges. But in that stage is a lot of innate power. Any time of transformation, whether it's a transformation of a country, transformation of a human being or of a butterfly, a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. There's a lot of power, creative power in that.
So you escaped into nature, but I'm fixated on that closet for some reason. What did the closet look like?
It had a door that shut, with a door handle on it, so I could go in there and sit. I would sit on the wood floor because, I didn't have a chair in there, of course, and I could sit in there and have peace.
Yeah.
Because we were always expected to be either if we were out and about working, and I was of the generation that we played outside, and we would be outside until we were called in. But if we had to work, we would, if my mother, and I know she wouldn't like me saying this because she's proud of me and what I've done, but if she saw us with books, she'd say, get up and do something.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
She wanted you to move your body?
Yeah, we needed to be doing something because there was always so much to be, there was always so much to be done in a household with all of those kids. So I understand that. But I wasn't in there to escape doing things because I contributed. I was there for my own peace of mind.
Yeah. Okay, next three.
1.
What's a place that shaped you as much as any person did?
That's interesting. That's like it's related. It's like falls right in line with the first one. What place shaped me? You know, the places that shaped me, there's places in the physical realm and places in the dreaming realm.
Tell me about both.
And the physical realm was going to the lake. Like my father, I loved the water. We would go over to Fort Gibson Lake. My mom would cook fried chicken, mashed potatoes, all that really good stuff. But again, it was taking us out of the ordinary, in a way, taking us out of the ordinary world to the water, the place of water. I think we all have predominant elements in our being, and my father, I've always felt, was more water, and my mother was more fire. And I feel like I'm both. I'm very much both.
It makes sense to me what you said. It was taking you out of your regular life. Like regular life was busy. You had a bunch of siblings, that there was a lot of household work to do, just the work of being alive.
Yeah, so the other place is in my dreaming realm. I would dream places that I didn't know the names. I would come back knowing names of places, and I still do that I didn't know. It gave me a sense of the immensity of, I guess, the immensity of creativity and how, and the immensity of how time really works, which is a lot about, poetry. That's poetry. I mean, a major element of poetry is time and how you use time, or how time makes layers in a poem or moves about in a poem.
Do you remember a specific dream you had as a child?
I remember there were several that took place even in old Egypt. I don't even know what period where I would be. I would see a sarcophagus. And, it was long before I'd even read about it. I didn't know there was an Egypt. I mean, I was a little kid in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I mean, that's creativity. I mean, when I write a poem, I feel like or music, working on a song, it's like you open a door and then you move about.
Yeah.
I don't really understand it, except that it's made me realize, and I think arts embody this, is that we're in it deep, and there's so many layers to consciousness.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Okay, last one in this round. 1, 2, or 3.
I'm going to go in the middle again.
What was a moment in your life when you could have chosen a different path?
My mother took me, I was about 15 or 16 when she took me to the Bureau of Indian Affairs office and told them that I was going to go to Chilocco Indian School, which was a decent Indian school up near the border of Oklahoma and Kansas. And actually my husband went there, and I would have met him earlier. But we were going out, this was a major crossroads, as we were going out the door, and I was going to sign up for that school, which would have freed me. The agent said, "We have a new school. It's out in Santa Fe called the Institute of American Indian Arts." And it was then mostly a high school, and it was for the arts. So I applied with art, with drawings, and got in.
Huh. When you say just getting into any school was going to free you from what?
I had lost any regard for myself because of what I had gone through at that point. I felt almost worthless. Now there was this strong spirit in me that knew otherwise. I've always felt that around me. There has always been, we all have guardians and so on, so I always felt this strong spirit, but there was a period where I just felt lost. And when that agent handed me that brochure, I knew that it was a doorway. I knew that was the way.
What was the force that made you lose yourself?
I watched what happened with my father, Muskogee Creek man, in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And, being native in Oklahoma and the whole deep history there was a heartache there, I think, a deep heartache. And then there was the stepfather coming into our lives who, I've tried to understand him, but he really had no regard for our lives. He married, he his interest, of course, was my mother. And it seems like repressing her, and in turn repressing us. And people don't do well under being oppressed, in whether it's by a country or by a person. And usually there are people behind that. People who are afraid or hate themselves or, insecure, etc. But when I wound up at that school with Native students from all over, and we were all artists and doing art, I was in my realm. I was in my realm of creativity and people who, I could talk in class there. I could not talk in class elsewhere. It's just that I felt I was in my place. And before I had felt almost misplaced.
Yeah. Did that division become more stark, though, when you went to the art school? And then presumably you still came home to see your mom. And did it feel worse knowing that there was this other life that you had access to now, and his behaviors were all the more egregious because you had something to compare it to?
Well, I'd had something with my life with my dad, and that wasn't a walk in a park, because he was so good looking, and women were always after him, and that it had its problems, but they were my parents, and they loved each other, and there was music. It wasn't warped. It wasn't. It was maybe healthy dysfunction. I don't know. There was dysfunction, but it wasn't. There wasn't the mean-spiritedness and the cruelty. I mean, I came home one night and my brothers and sister were huddled in my room because they had watched him make my mother play Russian roulette in front of them.
Oh, my God.
And I got there, and they were terrified. And I was terrified for my mother. And I felt like her guardian. And so I felt a little guilty leaving. But at that point, by the time I left, she had kind of gone over to his side in a way, maybe to survive. I think to survive, because I always knew that it was different, because I always knew my parents loved me, and that makes a difference. That makes a difference in your force field if you know that whatever happens, that they love you.
Yeah.
So I knew there was that, and I had that to go on. But I couldn't protect anybody.
Yeah.
I already learned that. I couldn't protect them. So, sometimes I feel bad that I wasn't the magnanimous maternal, staying there like the mother hen, but it's not me.
What a wonderful thing that you found that school.
It saved my life. I'm still part of it. I later taught there. It was, amazing, the late 60s, Santa Fe, New Mexico, and art, and being able to do art and be who you are.
Thank you for sharing all that. I appreciate it. I want to push back from the game for a minute, because
Okay.
I want to talk about the new version of your very, very beautiful book. It is called For a Girl Becoming. You published this originally in 2009, right?
Yes.
And how do you describe the story that's embedded in this?
That book came out with my first grandchild. What I came to realize, too, is that, when a mother gives birth, there's, she releases milk, her body goes through all of these mechanizations for care. But I think at the same time, there are mechanizations. I don't like that word, but there are systems, and I don't like that word either, but that doesn't work. That fits in the same category, that something is opened in the grandparents. You do with your children, but there's something about the grandchildren. You're not so focused on survival and trying to help them through. It's, it's different. It's a different relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I wrote children's books, and I started getting more narrative in a lot of my approaches. And so For a Girl Becoming is kind of a children's book, but it's it goes beyond that. It's a book for coming of age. And I seem to land on that period a lot. And I think it's because I went through so much during that coming of age period.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just working out trauma, but I want to be helpful. I think even in trauma, that's where you learn. That's where you learn yourself.
Yeah, of course.
Really, it's challenge. That's where you learn yourself and who you are and what you're made of. And so when this granddaughter hit that age, I wrote For a Girl Becoming, the poem in there for her.
As I was reading it, it gave me such a sense of security. Like, just thinking about how this young girl is born and brought into the world, and the illustrations are so gorgeous. But your writing and the illustrations leave you with the sense that this young new being has been woven into this beautiful, beautiful tapestry of her family, and that everybody's just going to be there for her. It doesn't matter what hard things come, and all the hard things will come. But it was just this precious feeling of safety that I got from reading this story through the whole thing. I thought, what a beautiful gift to give a child that sense of safety, which feels all the more profound thinking about your own childhood and how unsafe you felt.
Yeah, if you put it that way, that makes a lot of sense. There's themes. Every poet kind of has their themes, and I realize mine is transformation. One of them is healing and justice and transformation. What happens, in those transformative spaces. So I have another book out at the same time called Washing My Mother's Body. Because I didn't get to wash my mother's body when she died, and I wanted to, but I let that go because it was causing too much commotion. And there I am sitting in the middle of, researching and family stories and all of that about our removal, and this poem comes. I never got to wash my mother's body. And so poems teach you, and this poem taught me that I could do it in a poem. And in the poem, I do what I wasn't able to do in the physical, but I went and washed her body in the poem. And it's it's similar to For a Girl. It's kind of similar. These doorways of transformation that we walk through, and I feel like when I've walked through them, I haven't been the best. I hit the walls, awkward, too many elbows.
Oh.
Not too many. I'm glad I have it, but it's
do any of us walk through those doorways gracefully? Those transformative moments? I feel like it's always awkward.
Yeah, yeah.
But I love that you shared that in your poetry, you can do the things that you weren't able to do the first go around. It's a second chance.
But I think it's not the poet, just for me, the poet, but I think that's something useful for anyone that you can sit and you might do it through painting or with a song or writing, but writing is useful that way.
Yeah.
Because we all have things we say we regret or people who go we can't talk to, and you can do it. You can sit and write it and talk to them.
Thank you for that. The book is beautiful.
More cards?
Yes, Joy. Do we have more cards?
More cards.
3 new cards, 1, 2, or 3?
3. We'll do 3.
What's the biggest risk you've ever taken?
To me, this is the biggest risk. I sat in at the Blue Note in New York.
So now, and when you say sat in, you mean
I played a song. I played a song. Yes,
so
I did, and that terrified.
You are a musician. My favorite part about that is that you played the saxophone, right?
Yeah.
So you played the saxophone at the Blue Note?
I did. I'm friends with Esperanza Spalding, and she was doing a 2-week run, and I'd played with her. We just improv. We're friends.
Yeah.
But
this is different.
Oh yeah. I mean, she said, "Oh, why don't you sit and do a song? Do a piece with with her." And so I couldn't say no. I mean, I thought about it. I mean, I thought about saying no. Well, what would I feel like if I said no? Well, I would feel very disappointed.
Yeah.
Like I should have done it, and I don't want any should-haves.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was terrified. So I'm sitting down there with my horn on my lap, waiting to be called up, and I'm thinking, what if my horn messes up?
It's just the Blue Note. It's just like the most famous jazz club in America.
I know. I love that club. I often go there. If I go to New York, maybe that's where I should go tonight.
But you got over your nerves, you got on stage, and you did it.
The thing I've learned, because I used to have horrible stage fright, it was bad enough when I was just doing poetry, and then I picked up horn when I was almost 40 and learned to play mostly on stage. But the thing I learned was that if I just listen to the music, and that's even if I'm just reading or even doing wildcard, that if I just listen to the music, I'm okay.
Yeah.
But I did it. To me, that was like bungee jumping from the bridge at the Royal Gorge.
I feel like playing the sax with Esmeralda Spalding is safer and probably a bigger high, frankly.
Well, yeah. I mean, they were just wonderful musicians, and just to be. And the thing I was taught early on is to play with people better than you.
Yeah. That's how you grow.
Yeah.
Okay. 3 more. 1, 2, 3.
Let's do the 3 again.
Oh, I'm so glad this one came up. Is the music you listen to happier or sadder than you are?
Well, there's several parts of me. I'm like, my mother used to write music, and she would write these really kind of sad ballads. However, she wrote a song that my sister just gave it to me, and she typed it out. She didn't capitalize everything, and I love the way she wrote jazz, Jass. This was in the early 50s. It's called My Guy. We just recorded that song with Esperanza. We just recorded it.
Wow.
For my next album, from Folkways. And it's so cool. It's my mother's song. And I like that because it's so up.
Yeah.
And most of her songs were these really heartbreak ballads, sort of like Patsy Cline and Crazy. And I love those scraping the bottom of your heart ballads.
So I'm hearing you say you're in for the whole gambit. You're in for the whole thing, all the emotions.
Yeah, Nat King Cole, and then I like funk. My most played artist on my is James Brown.
I was not expecting that. Okay, we're in the last round. This is the beliefs round.
Oh,
Sort
great.
of touched on beliefs throughout the whole thing, though, but
yeah.
They're going to get more pointed.
Well, we're in it. It is pointed. I keep thinking a lot of the problems we have going on right now are because of belief systems. You know, how powerful. I keep thinking about how powerful and potent beliefs are.
Yeah. Let's get at it.
The middle, number 2, I guess, yes.
How have your feelings about God changed over time?
Tremendously. I think I try to, if I think about God before there were words, it has to do with the rainbows and sunlight, or that kind of joy, a kind of resonance that goes through everything. And I think kids have that. And then I remember, going to church and God being very much like an image of Jesus, or an illustration of an elderly white man. And that was the next implanted image of God. And then there were qualities given to this God, or certain rules that kept them far, far away, or that they were always angry with you, or that you would always be guilty in their presence. So that was the second version, which didn't really sit right with me because, in our Muskogee tradition, and I think in we were created by love. I remember my husband and I would sometimes will lay there and just talk for hours, even now. And we were laying there talking, and I said, I think about why were we created with, you think about the system, all of the systems in our body, and the magnificence of it and how everything works together, and then all of it, the insects, the birds, and all of this is going on. And I think I can be overwhelmed and think, why? I mean, we all ask those questions. I mean, why? Why these systems? Why this striving? Why do we go through, all the challenges? Why evil? I mean, why all of this? And the way that I find a peace in it is kindness, is knowing that there's kindness. And if I move, then it can all make sense that, okay, all of this can go on, but the path of kindness will bring, it brings a different kind of nourishment.
Is that the third version of God then? Is that the present version for you?
Probably, yes. I think that's more the present, where there's it's again an immense creator, an immense creativity, but it's imbued with what we call anagechka, with a love that is so potent and powerful, and it connects everybody. And when I say everybody, I also mean the winds, the plants, the animals, each of us.
Thank you.
So that's where I am now.
Yeah.
That could change.
Yeah. I like that idea. 3 more cards. 1, 2, or 3.
It's between 2 and 3. I'll go with 3.
When do you feel connected to the people you've lost?
Frequently. Yeah, it's funny. The older I get, then I talk a little bit more about things I usually wouldn't talk about.
I think that's true for me too.
In 2011, I helped my mother pass. My mother's around all the time. But it was not long after that, and my cousin died. And they said she died in a chair. She was just sitting there. And, she had different health problems, my age, though. And this was about 10, 11, 12 years ago. And so I went to her funeral. My sister and I went to her funeral, and I was amazed that she looked almost like she was going to stand up and walk out of there. Well, a few years ago, I'm just laying there right before I go to sleep, and there she was. And we just talked. We just talked for a moment and said, hey, it wasn't freaky. I mean, I saw her like it was like she was there. And we just said, hey, how are you doing? And I said, yeah, at your funeral, you didn't even look like you were dead. I mean, we just talked for a moment, and then she was gone. She was just visiting. And then there's some people that you would really, like my father. My father doesn't come to me that much. One time I was going through something, and I was living in New Mexico, and I'm sitting there real quiet. That's when you can often, you can hear them. I was sitting there real quiet, and my father came and said, I'm so proud of you. And the other day, it was on his birthday, it was February 28th, and I was really wanting to hear from, I didn't hear anything. But that's, I figure, I get a sense that he's not around. My mother is around, though. I mean, people are different. But they're always, we do talk about our ancestors, at least in our culture. And I think, we, obviously, by the time I'm a great-grandparent now.
Gosh.
You watch things reappear in the children and the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren. And, it goes on that there's a continuum, and you start to you get little insights into the whole thing. And so they're around, some of them, some closer, some not. But I feel like I stay in touch with that. Some people don't. Some people, it's not in their realm. You talk about belief systems, it's not in their realm of belief.
Yeah.
Even though somebody might be standing right by them wanting to talk to them. Or they find ways to do it, they find ways to do it. But yeah, I think it's just part of living.
We end the show the same way every time. You travel to one moment from your past. It is not a moment that you want to change anything about. It's just a moment you would like to linger in a little longer. What moment do you choose?
Now I'm going to cry. Holding my daughter after she was born.
Can you share any more details about that moment where you were, what she smelled like, what you were looking at?
Yeah, and then I think of my son too, But I say my daughter because I lost her recently.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh,
So
I'm
often
so
what I do,
sorry.
I go back to when she was a baby. And but I was so happy. And I know that she would rather me think of happiness. She would rather have me think of happiness.
Yeah.
She's made that clear. And I was so happy, I mean, it's funny. It made no sense that I had a child at that time, but her spirit came to me, and and I was so, even though I was going through stuff, I don't need to go into that right now. But when she was born, in the midst of all of this, Wounded Knee was going on, and a lot of challenges, but it was just, I said yes, and I wanted her, and I welcomed her, and I was just so happy.
Joy Harjo, it has been such a pleasure to get to share this time with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was fun, kind of.
Joy Harjo's new version of For a Girl Becoming is out April 29th.